Imagine getting a message that all your systems are down, no technology can be accessed, and your entire network is encrypted. Your backups gone. Your company's future hanging by a thread. You have two options. Pay the ransom and pray that the people that you're paying are actually the ones with your data, or that they won't leak it afterward. Or two, you can call the person that actually negotiates with hackers for a living. This isn't science fiction. Today we go into the dark corners of ransomware negotiations, where one wrong move can cost millions and even cost lives. Our next guest, Kurtis Minder, has faced down cybercriminals from Russian syndicates to North Korean-backed groups and lived to write about it. This is Cyber Recon. This is how to handle cybercrime negotiations, hacking, and the best ways to stop ransomware. And this is Cybercrime Junkies. Catch us on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, and dive deeper at cybercrimejunkies.com. Don't just watch, be the type of person that fights back. This is Cybercrime Junkies. And now, the show. All right, well, welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies. I am your host, David Morrow, and alongside me today is a fantastic co-host, my good friend, Dr. Sergio Sanchez. Dr. Sergio, how are you, sir?
Hello, how are you, everybody? Thank you for, again, be here with you guys, and we are ready to start.
Yep, very excited. So today's guest isn't just talking about cybercrime, he's negotiating with cyber criminals behind it. He's been called the real-life ransomware whisperer, and if he doesn't know that he's been called that, I just called him that. Founder and CEO of GroupSense, author of an outstanding new book, Cyber Recon, a gripping look inside the world of cyber espionage, high-stakes negotiation, and the psychological chess match that plays out behind every ransomware attack. Please welcome the man who mastered the art of negotiation with cyber criminals, Mr. Kurtis Minder. Welcome to the studio, sir.
Thank you. That's quite a lot to live up to, man.
Hey, man, if you ever want, I will jump into any Teams and Zoom meeting and just introduce you like that and then leave.
It'd be like my hype man.
Leave right now. So I appreciate your time today. So let's dig in. One of the questions that I stole from Sergio in our prep is, in writing the book, were there any stories that you wanted to share but you couldn't, either due to operational security or ongoing cases or things like that?
Actually, a lot. So the content for the book was basically an amalgamation of a bunch of little vignettes that I had made. I had a drive just full of these documents that are point in time experiences that I was like, I have to save this. I have to save this. And like, I'm going to say half of them, I just couldn't. There's too much risk either for me or for the other people involved, and I couldn't do it. So it was hard to pick which ones, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, your book talks about several, and you do an excellent job of kind of breaking down the subjects. And so we're going to get into like spying as a service and the ransomware negotiation themselves and AI now. But one thing I wanted to ask you is all the experience that you have in negotiating these ransomware attacks. Are there certain trends or categories that you've seen? Like after a while of doing something, we always we have good, 30,000 foot view of it that other people don't really have. And I'm just curious about trends that you're seeing, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of patterns and trends. I think first and foremost, after doing a few dozen of these, we noticed that there's a very distinct playbook that the threat actors, most of them are operating off of. They do pivot from that occasionally, but not too often. They pretty much stick to it. And so, we would go into cases and we'd be able to tell the client, they're going to ask for this. We're going to go back and forth like this for 5 days, and we're going to settle about here, right? And because it was so predictable. Now, some of them have figured that out and have made changes to the playbook to try to throw us off, or a number of groups have also picked up that they're dealing with professional, academic level negotiators, and they've studied themselves. And I was like, I recognize that trick, so they're definitely adapting, I guess. But yeah.
That's phenomenal. One thing I want to ask you, we were talking about the books I have on my shelf and the Chris Voss and the Black Swan framework that he talks about. What was your, to what degree do you involve almost FBI style negotiation in hostage negotiation when you're negotiating with ransomware? Because there's so many parallels to it. Because the data is being hostage, there's an emotional effect that's happening to the business owners. They see their life flash before them.
And they're acting irrational. Yeah. I think, the Venn diagram overlap of the sort of business academic level negotiation, tool set and hostage negotiation tool set that maybe somebody like Chris Voss would foster in his job. I think there's a pretty big overlap in the middle. That Venn part is really where the ransomware world lives. It's combining those two. When I first got a call from Chris, we were both going to speak at this conference in New York. It was the NYPD Counterterrorism and Cyber Intelligence Conference. And he called me before. I knew he was going to be there. I was excited. I wanted to meet him because I'd obviously read his book and I took his master class. And he called me and he said, "Hey, I just listened to a Wall Street Journal tech podcast you're on, and I really dig your methods." And I said, of course, he said it in a better voice than that.
He's like,
and I said, exactly. And I said, that's because they're your methods, Chris.
That's why he liked them.
Right, exactly. So there's definitely a lot of overlap, and I have taken a lot from his book and applied it to this very strange paradigm. Yeah.
Well, in ransomware negotiations, can you for a non-technical business owner, small, mid-sized business, can you just kind of walk us through what all is involved? Because when every now and then we're an MSSP, and so we're brought in as first responders, and we do a lot of part of InfoGuard, so we do a lot of just security awareness training. When we're talking to people, we're like, are you ready? Are you aware that everything could be down, all of your icons and all the systems could be white, and there'll be a text file that says come speak to us on some talks channel, right? And people are like, what? Like, they have no idea even what you're talking about. I'm like, this is how it works. Like, this is real. Like, that's why you have to prepare for events like this. Can you just walk us through high level, kind of like in a traditional scenario, like what occurs? Like this is for the non-technical person who may be listening to this.
Well, I'm glad you asked it that way, because, the negotiation part is obviously the part that gets talked about a lot, but there's a lot more to the ransomware response job than the negotiation itself. In fact, sometimes that negotiation is actually a rather minor part of the process, right? So it also depends on the size of the client, right? Or the sort of, financial profile of the client. It varies quite a bit. But in most cases, the cyber insurance company or the law firm is bringing us to the table most of the time. Sometimes it's organic, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm assessing what have these guys done in planning for this, and where are they in that response process, right? So try to understand, what have you done so far, and discuss impact. And we even developed sort of a basic business impact matrices that we would walk clients through to try to help them understand the financial impact. It's really difficult to do no matter what size your business is, but it is better that before we engage with a threat actor, that we have some quantitative sort of order of magnitude, I guess, of where we want to go with this, and not just like, Kurtis, go take it down to as close to zero and call me back. That's not a good strategy.
Right.
So we kind of walk them through that. We help them we educate them. We help them understand who we're dealing with, set expectations. Sometimes the expectations are seemingly obvious to people like you and I, but not to them. So, like, for example, one thing that I often tell clients, and this has been the case a lot lately with some of the larger groups like Akira and groups like that, I say, hey, look, this thing that just happened to you is the most important thing in your universe. It's not in theirs. So
Right.
your expectations about their timeliness and responses don't matter. Like they have 100 victims. And,
Right.
So just setting expectations about what's really going on, who we're dealing with, and then walking them through sort of their menu of options. And, as a side note, I often act as some form of a therapist, I think, for these people.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what
Yeah.
our team has talked about, because we've had people, business owners pass out on Zoom or even in person. They cry, they get very emotional because their personal lives are so tied into their business, especially if it's, a $30 million manufacturing company. Like, they built that thing, right? Like, that is their baby. That's their whole life. And it's tied to their retirement and everything about their life. And now it's
their identity.
Yeah, it's their identity. And and it's being attacked by people overseas who have grown up their whole lives not liking us. Right. And it's very difficult for business owners to accept sometimes.
Indeed.
Kurtis, I have a question for you. And of course, if you can answer, I don't want you breaking any confidentiality, okay? Can you tell us what was the most intense ransomware negotiation that you has been part of?
Well, it's kind of hard to say between the ones that have the highest stakes. So when you talk about, something that's impacting human life, like a medical situation, a cancer charity, that one was tough. And the ones that are just big numbers, it's really hard to, they're both similarly stressful for different reasons. But, I do think the one, and even like some of the smaller ones, I know I'm not giving you the exact, single answer you want, but even some of the smaller ones where it's like, I know that this person, like their entire business is gone unless I figure out a way to make this work for them by Tuesday. I mean, there's so many that are so stressful for different reasons. But certainly the ones where we're concerned about like human safety, I think, are the ones that are they sort of trump everything else, but we've had a little bit of everything. The tens of millions of dollars, large international organizations that are, undergoing, huge operational interruption costing them millions of dollars a day. And if you've read any of the books, like some of the books behind you, David, you'll know that speeding through these things is not wise.
Right. Yeah.
Like delay is a great tactic. And so,
is.
When you're losing millions of dollars a day and your board is yelling at you to hurry up, it's just really stressful.
Talking about the stress, how do you personally manage the stress of negotiation with these criminals? How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think not to be cheesy, I think I have a pretty good mental health regimen to begin with. I meditate every day. I write in a journal every day, right? I eat healthy. I exercise. So all of those normal sort of healthy habits help. I think also I have a therapist, right? And that helps. So I also have a good network of people who have done this kind of work, whether in law enforcement, undercover, or, people like Chris. I can text Chris, or call Chris. When I get stuck or I get frustrated, I have an outlet, in those ways. But it still can really get to me. I mean, I do lose sleep over it.
Being able to text Chris Voss helps. The author of Never Split the Difference. If you're able to text,
I didn't say you text me back
and communicate with the leading FBI hostage negotiator. That's something that'll help my mental health next time. That's pretty good. I had him on one interview. Like, I wish I could text him and be like, my wife is really mad at me. Could you help me do this? Like, how do I negotiate this?
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Usually I text them like war stories. So I'll say, hey, this happened. they did this. I used this tool, and this is what happened. Have you ever seen that before? That kind of thing.
That's phenomenal.
And Kurtis, talking about tools, and I must tell you, I love AI. I think AI is a wonderful new tool that will make life easier. But also thinking about this is a very good tool. I know these criminals are going to use it. So how tools like ChatGPT, deepfakes, all these AI agents are changing this game now for attackers and defenders. Do you have any opinion?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think like the rest of us, the threat actors and the ransomware groups included started with, using AI to build better synthetic content. That's like the first thing they did, which was better phishing emails, better, credential harvesting landing pages, the days of the phishing emails with all the grammatical
errors and things like that are gone.
Yeah, so they fixed all of that. The next thing, and I sort of predicted this was coming, Dr. Sanchez, they take, with every attack, they'll first take a copy of as much data as they can. And they're taking terabytes, tens of terabytes, hundreds of terabytes, like depending on how long they've been in there, they'll take a lot of data. And I think in the past, it had been too much data for them to weed through and find things that were useful for their case, right? For leverage, for extortion. I don't think that's true anymore. I think that they're using AI to find the most important documents in the data set and surface them, and even educate them as to what the documents are and how they can be used as leverage. So I think they're using it in that way. I don't know that they're using it to write malware yet, or if they are, it's nascent. But it's coming. It's coming.
No, go ahead, Sergio.
Sorry, Dave. I was going to ask you something. I mean, do always these criminals require payments into, with cryptocurrency?
Yeah. It's not always Bitcoin, mostly Bitcoin, but a cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Monero, Zcash, typically.
And then that raises the whole issue of, are you paying the right cyber criminal, right? Like there's a vetting process, right? Don't you ask for, in typical, I know every single negotiation is unique, but don't you get a proof of life to vet that they actually have the data, right? And then when you're making the payment, don't you actually have to make sure that it's going to the right group?
Right. Yeah, a test payment. Yep. So we'll make a test payment of a random small amount and ask them to read it back to us. We also have to check for compliance, right? We have to make sure that these guys aren't on the sanctions list and things like that. So we're not in trouble with the Treasury Department. While we're talking about the cryptocurrency part of it, I think that's another part of my job that people don't realize, and that is the financial logistics associated with what we just talked about can be non-trivial. So, you'd think you could just call your bank up and say, I'd like to transfer $2 million to a crypto wallet.
Yeah, that's not.
They might go, you know what? We'd only do $50,000 a day, right? Like, and the bad guys don't care about your bank policies. And so these are all part of the, the stuff that we do on the front end to understand what we have to work with. You know what I mean?
Unbelievable. And then let me ask you this, how do ransomware negotiators in general vet or validate that the data won't be leaked later? Because once they have a copy of the data, and I believe it was the Power School breach recently, it was not a ransomware attack, but in the Power School breach recently, I believe I read, because I slapped my head when I read it, like they talked to the cyber criminal, and the cyber criminal took a video of them deleting the data, and that's how they knew that they weren't going to ultimately release that data later. And I was like, what? I'm like, you're going to believe them? Like, oh, here's me. I'm typing keys. Do you see this? I am deleting your data. Don't you worry. You can pay us the money now. Like, what? Like, there's got to be a better way, right?
If you guys know a better way, let me know. But
I don't know.
Unfortunately,
is that you really have to kind of take them at their word, don't you?
Well, and I just tell victims that they should assume that they didn't delete it.
Right.
No matter what log files they give us, assume that they didn't, and do some post-incident monitoring. So do dark web monitoring. Just as you don't want that to blindside you and show up later, right? You don't want to hear from your customers or law enforcement or the media about this stuff surfacing someplace it shouldn't be in a few months from now. So do some monitoring. But yeah, you should assume storage is cheap. And just on, not to get into the nation state part of this, but I think most of these actors have this sort of unofficial amnesty awarded them by their country.
Yes.
Russia, for example, that amnesty probably has a quid pro quo.
Right.
Which is we get a copy.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point. So then the intelligence group will be able to access all of the data.
Yeah.
Regardless. Yeah, that's a very good. I never thought of that. That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, and we saw, I think it was the Change Healthcare, where they paid when Black Hat, right before Black Hat did their exit scam, allegedly. It seems like they had paid the Black Hat administrators, but then the main affiliate who had done it still had a copy of the data. Yep. So they weren't able to vet that, and then he went back to them or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's, that probably more of a flaw in Black Hat's, ransomware as a service infrastructure. But yeah, we're dealing with criminals. It is what it is,
One of the things you talk about in the book is spying as a service. I'd like you to kind of elaborate that, explain that in English, and explain the difference between that and ransomware as a service.
Yeah, so the main product that the company I started, was started to perform was more of a cyber espionage operation on threat actors. And that, the idea behind it is no different than why we have the CIA, right? It's having a better understanding of our adversaries' capabilities, motivations, and resources helps us inform ourselves as to how to defend ourselves, right? And we have limited resources to defend ourselves. And it's the exact same for CISOs, and even maybe more extreme. It's like, if you don't have a picture of what's going on and who might target you with what and why, then you're guessing. Right. You're building this wall, you're kind of guessing. And so that was sort of the purpose behind it. We didn't raise a lot of venture money, mostly because a lot of the venture funds they want product companies. They want high volume, data spewing product companies. Yeah,
transactional. Right. They can see their returns every quarter, etc.
Right, and this wasn't that. This was more. It was more outcome driven, and that almost became a religion at the company. It was like, look, we don't develop a solution if we can't drive a tangible outcome for the client. So sending you data that tells you about bad things that you can't do anything about is a terrible product. Yeah. So we hired a lot of people, and we had these really smart people that spoke, a dozen languages, and were hanging out in chat rooms with bad guys and doing almost traditional human intelligence work. And we were really good at it. And that's sort of what dovetailed into the ransomware response work. Is we had a reputation among the responders for, hey, if you need somebody to go talk to a bad guy and validate some stolen data or something, the group sense people can do it. And we sort of had this reputation for that, and that they assumed that also meant we could negotiate.
Right.
With them. And we did, but initially we were not as let's say scientific as we are now.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when there's a ransomware attack and a business owner or leadership has to decide on whether they pay or not, there's a lot of talk about possibly banning ransomware payments in certain industries. What's your view of it? I know the FBI we always say not to pay a ransom because you're funding cybercrime, but we understand that there are business decisions that need to be made.
Well, I've actually briefed 2 committees in Congress about this stuff, and I've got a pretty strong opinion. If banning ransomware payments, if the goal of banning ransomware payments is to prevent people from making ransomware payments, I believe it will fail. Because if the victim has basically 2 choices: pay a ransomware payment or go out of business, or pay a ransomware payment or people die. they're going to make the payment and you're just not going to know about it. Keep in mind, we're doing this over dark web and cryptocurrency, so it won't be hard for them to hide this.
Right.
So what you end up doing is, as a government, is losing the visibility. I think I think there's an ROI for the government investing in prevention and response to give companies a third option.
I would agree with that. That's great.
Yeah. Well, and then going back to my point about the data, the bad guys have been taking this data for 7 or 8 years as standard operating procedure.
Right.
Just assume that the Russian FSB has exabytes of our data, of our maps of our roads, architectural plans of our buildings, financial statements. It's a national security issue, frankly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, cybercrime in general is. Yeah, completely.
So do you see a pattern in these kind of criminals? Are they doing it for money, for ideology, ego, politics? What do you think? Is a pattern there?
I think it's primarily financially driven, but it's reinforced with ideology. So and I talk about this in the book, trying to understand the perspective or the lens that these folks might see the world through. In some ways, I feel like we've shot ourselves in the foot in the West, because if you watch Western television and you're from Donetsk, you think we can afford this,
right?
Because you just think like, we're all rich. We'll recover. We'll be fine. I don't think they use that as an excuse for what they do. I also try not to judge them, because I didn't grow up in Donetsk or Minsk or whatever. So I don't know what it's like there economically. I don't know what opportunities are you have. So this might be what they think is the only way to support their family. I have no idea. I'm not excusing them. It's not sympathy, but it is maybe some form of empathy, right? Where I can understand what they might be thinking.
That's exactly what John DiMaggio and I just spoke about last week, is because he gets a lot, or actually 2 weeks ago, right before he went to DEF CON, because he has, and I know that you know him, he's in your book. He said, I get a lot of flack. People think I'm sympathetic to them. He's like, I'm not, but I have to understand them, and you can't help but feel for their scenario, even though what they're doing is wrong and there's no question about it. And I'm like, that's empathy. Like it's different. Like learning to understand is different than sympathizing with them, right? Like in agreeing with them. That like John never agrees with them, but he needs to understand, just like you do. You need to understand their modus operandi, their motives, their general tactics, in order to defend properly.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that's also, that takes from the espionage playbook as well. It's like, get as close to them as you can possibly get, so you understand their why and their motivation and their capabilities. Yeah.
One thing Sergio and I talk about quite a bit is the undetectability when they first get in. It's just shocking to me how long they are inside for a period of time. And a lot of it has to, I know every organization is different. Some organizations don't have detection capabilities in place anyway, so they're going to be in there for a while. Are you seeing any trends or any consistency in terms of how long they are generally inside undetected before either they launch or something catches them?
I mean, it used to be, months, pretty commonly months. We had one case where I think they were in there for over a year and they took 400 terabytes, but nobody noticed.
Wow.
Nobody noticed. That's a lot of data to transfer outside the network, right? Lately, they seem to be moving a little bit faster. And I think that's part of the ransomware as a service. They're not as interested in casing the client. They just want to do quick hit, grab, and run kind of. So they've definitely, at least on the broader market, and it's funny, I like to think these guys have like their own go-to-market strategy. So they're a business and they have go-to-market strategies. And so some of them it's a volume game. They're hitting as many people as they can, as quickly as they can. Others are still doing the big game hunting. I think the big game hunting is where they're going to still be very, there'll be long dwell times. We're going to spend time in the network and really understand it better. So they can impact things like the backup processes and stuff like that when they do them. Yeah.
There is, Have you ever come across having to clean up afterward of a prior ransomware negotiator or anything like that? I mean, I know that there's in John DiMaggio's recent findings, he talked about how the Kaseya hackers in jail, and how one of the questions that he was asking John was, I'm my sentence is to pay back 60 million. I only stole like 5
because of the data recovery people, right?
Because the data recovery people had told the victims, like they had bought from me the decrypt key for $1 million. Then they told the victims, well, we're going to be able to get it for 10 million. And they were keeping the difference or something like that is what they said.
I remember the first time, I've run into those guys a lot of times. I filed FTC complaints against them.
Okay.
I know some of them have offices here in the U.S.
Yeah.
They're still operating, and it drives me nuts. But I remember the first time I found one of those guys, and it was it goes to the beginning of your question, which was the victim called us. It was the day after Thanksgiving a few years ago. And they said, hey, we tried to pay this recovery company, and they kind of ghosted us. And I said, what was the recovery company going to do? And they said, well, they said they had some special software that could decrypt
like
this.
quantum. They've got quantum computer.
And I didn't want to.
If they have that, if they have that, we would love to see that.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'd have bigger national security concerns, wouldn't we? But so I said, well, I didn't want to upset the guy anymore, but I'm thinking in my head, like, that's not a thing, but okay.
Right.
And he said, I said, what did he ask you for? And he said, he asked me for the ransom note and a couple of files that he could test his software on. Well, that sounds a lot like a proof of life to me.
Right.
And why would he need the ransom note?
Right.
Why would he need that? And so I was like, can I see it, please? And I went and I saw the transcript of the data recovery person negotiating. And I remember in your episode with John, you talk about how they take it offline. They did not take it offline. I saw the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And I saw what they negotiated it to. And by the time I had done that, they had contacted this guy again, the recovery company, and marked it up 80%.
Wow.
From what I saw the final number was. Yeah.
And business owners, victims of these attacks, they don't know. How would they know?
Well, but do they? Here's a question I have. In the U.S., I think it's illegal now for some municipalities or government entities to pay a ransom, or it's against the rules, right? But what if you just paid a data recovery company?
Right.
I didn't pay the bad guy. I paid this company. They have special software.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? It's a plausible deniability. And if you go to some of the websites of these data recovery companies, you will see all of their reference clients are municipalities and law enforcement.
Wow.
And I think they might know what they're doing. And they're just covering it up.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Kurtis, based on your experience, what is the number one mistake organizations still make that leaves them vulnerable?
Password reuse.
Wow. You had that ready.
Thing.
You had that ready.
Yeah, actually, password reuse.
I have another question for you. How many companies, get ransomware, they pay the ransom, and a couple of weeks, months, or days later, they get again ransomware? Reinfected, I will say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does happen, but I don't know of a single case where, at least in my sample size, where it has been the same ransomware actor.
Right, because they hear about it, the other gangs hear about it, right? And then they target them.
And this really just speaks to your incident response capabilities, right? So if you haven't truly locked the doors, you're susceptible. The other guys are opportunistic. They don't care that you just had an incident. They don't care. They'll go for so that I've had that happen. I will say though, we've done some research, and I do believe that the ransomware actors do repurpose some of that other data to do other kinds of attacks, like business email compromise and things like that. So we've seen evidence to support that. But I don't see ransomware groups attacking the same victim twice, Dr. Sanchez.
I have to tell you something interesting, and I hope nobody's taking ideas from me, people hearing this show. But thinking about, again, I'm coming from a country that sadly drug dealers is a huge business, right? Mm-hmm. But because also it's a huge business, they have to spend money in the business, locations, people, transport, equipment, etc., etc.
Infrastructure.
Do you think that will be kind of scary that all these, and not only now, Mexican drug lords, but everybody now thinking, well, you know what? Drugs is a lot of money that we can, get money from, but the high risk of get caught or lose the business. Mm-hmm. What about if we now try to do what, North Koreans, Russians, basically all those locations
engage in cybercrime?
Yeah, we do cybercrime, and don't worry about getting mules and getting worried to be arrested in U.S. soil because we will never step there anyway.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think that's entirely plausible. And I also, it's probably some version of that's probably happening, maybe not on a grand scale. I also think that the U.S. Specifically is not prepared to handle it from a law enforcement standpoint.
Sure.
So some of the work that I do a lot of like sort of pro bono work for small businesses. A lot of that comes through local law enforcement and municipalities around the country. And the digital investigation capabilities of municipal law enforcement is near zero.
Right.
So if you're a victim of a cybercrime, and take out the major metros, but anywhere else in the United States, you basically, they're going to tell you to file a report with the IC3, which is the Internet Crimes Reporting
FBI's,
site. They're never going to call you. And that's the end of your case. So you're the victim of an actual financial crime, and no one's going to investigate it. And that's a problem, and that also needs to get fixed.
Yeah, is it really just a staffing matter or a resource matter at the federal level? Do you think? I mean,
it's the double-edged sword of how the U.S. is so fragmented, right? Same thing with like election security, right? So the people responsible for election security are these little municipalities who have no money, no cyber capable. Same thing. The law enforcement is the same issue, but the funding is going to have to come from the federal government eventually to support this. And there's a cultural issue too, because a lot of police officers don't think this is a real crime. They're like, it's computer stuff. That's not a real crime, right? I tackle people who rob the shoe store. That's a real crime. Mm-hmm. This is not. And so there's a cultural gap as well that it'll be a tough road, but we're going to have to figure it out.
I will, not to further answer Sergio's question, but I did see there was a documentary that John DiMaggio was part of about 2 years ago. It was on National Geographic. And they had interviewed actually a couple members of the Crips and the Bloods, and how they were talking about they were going into carding. Not necessarily, it's cybercrime, but it's not ransomware per se. But they were going into that because they said, look, if I get caught, I do maximum 5 years in a federal penitentiary.
It's a white collar crime.
It's a white collar crime, and I'm not jeopardizing getting shot. And I go to a federal prison rather than state, and it's 5 years as opposed to the mandatory minimums that drug dealing has. So that was the first thought I ever had about them switching over in some capacity. It doesn't seem like,
if anybody wants to look it up, that show is Trafficked by Marianne Van
Yes,
Zeller,
Trafficked.
Is what it was.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a great series.
Great show. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting because that was the first time. I don't see, at least in the breaches that I researched, I don't see that being prevalent yet. But it could be something that evolves over time as their computer skill sets improve.
And with AI, basically everybody can be a hacker now.
Well, I also don't think with ransomware you've got these initial access broker markets, which are people that break into the networks and then sell the access.
Right.
You've got ransomware as a service platform. So if you can use cryptocurrency and you can use the dark web, there is no technical capability required. You buy the access, you plug in the ransomware as a service, and you take a percentage. That's it.
Yep. All the coding and all the highly technical aspect it's really just bought. It's like a product. Unbelievable. In terms of dark web marketplaces, you touched about them in a section in your book. What is it that that business owners need to understand about dark web marketplaces. I mean, to me, it's always fascinating because you can buy session cookies, you can buy, obviously, credentials, right? And log in as somebody as opposed to even having to hack it. Because people
Which doesn't set off your intrusion detection system, does it?
Right. No, it doesn't.
Right.
And people reuse passwords and it's right there. Like, I got a good password. I use it on everything. And I'm like, no, that's not the answer, right? Like, it's good that it's a good one, that it's long, right? But it's not good that your Facebook is the same as your banking. Like, that's not good.
Right.
I
think having your key, one key for your house, your car, your office.
Right, exactly. One key, and then you leave that everywhere. Right.
And your safety deposit box.
Right,
Same
exactly.
Key. Right, yeah. No, so, I think what companies need to understand is that there is, dark web monitoring seems like a nice to have. It these days, because of everything you just said, it's pretty much fundamental part of a security program. So looking for indicators of risk for your organization in dark web marketplaces has a tremendous amount of defense value.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. That's really good. And it seems that, I mean, it is exciting when international law enforcement combines and they take down one of these big marketplaces. Everybody celebrates because it is a win. But then we all know, like, immediately 5 others pop up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those disruptions are very temporary, unfortunately.
Yeah. Interesting.
Probably,
so,
probably the solution would be to create an international kind of like a internet police. You kind of like CIPOL or something like that.
I mean, I know there's a lot of collaboration between Interpol and the U.S. federal law enforcement and stuff like that on a regular basis, but they've all got different agendas. So like having a united central one wouldn't be a bad idea, I don't think.
So one thing I wanted to ask you is, how do you balance all of it when you are in a negotiation and you are negotiating with a cyber criminal? Payer liability, moral hazards, right? Potential future hacks. How do you balance all of that?
So one, I try to be, sort of the dictionary for the situation. I don't try to impose any sort of my will on anyone. So, other than if it's illegal, I won't do it. But I won't engage with a threat actor, sanctions list or whatever. But other than that, if somebody asks me, should I pay? That's up to them. And,
right.
And one of the things that I do discuss often with these victims is, and I think this is super important, but it sounds kind of cheesy, and that is, if you run a values-based organization, and this paying a ransom would be against your values. If the first time it's inconvenient for you to honor those values and you just pay the ransom, your values are useless from here on out, for everyone, right? And so, we talk about, that's a gate. That's a gate you have to cross. Is it against your values as an organization or as a person? Is it illegal? That's another gate. And then does it make business sense and how much, right? And those are really the gates, and walking them through those as transparently as possible.
That's got to be so delicate. I mean, that's why you have got Chris Voss on speed dial, pretty much. Like,
I think I was blessed with like some form of empathy too. So I definitely understand it. But I say that because I've tried to hire for this, and it's not easy. Right? It's not a trainable skill so much. It's something somebody has or doesn't have, and But I do think I have an ability to not only understand the victim and the bad guys, but also speak to them in a way that they understand that I understand. And but it is emotionally exhausting for me.
I bet.
Absolutely. One thing I was curious on. So OFAC has a list of like places you can't, we don't trade with. We're not allowed to pay. Let's say a gang gets placed on OFAC. But then some of the gang members or the affiliates, they move around all the time. Or the gang itself dissolves. We're out of business, like Black Hat. We're out of business. Meanwhile, everybody that was there is just rebranded, and now they're in other ones. How do we enforce OFAC when that happens? Or how do you deal with that? How do you address that?
So you're absolutely right. It's almost useless because
that's what I was.
It's almost
that's what
useless.
I come up with, and I'm like, there's got to be somebody smarter than me has figured this out.
I mean,
I don't know.
if you're just doing it, in the spirit of of following the line of law, it's a checkbox, and you just do the thing and submit the paperwork and move on. Companies like GroupSense, I believe you're doing this correctly. You are providing additional context, like what you just talked about, saying, "Hey, look, the person in this group is widely known to have been a founder of this other group, which is on the list." Now, while we're not technically violating sanctions, we are paying someone who was on the sanctions list under another name, and and then they'll ask me legal advice, and I'll be like, "Take that to your lawyer, and you guys decide what you want to do." Right, and so we do give them that additional context. It helps to be a CTI sort of espionage company because we have a lot of that data, right? We know, where these guys are. So, yeah.
Unbelievable. And have you ever had a business owner that was true to their values and just would refuse to pay criminals for doing this? But then it gets to the point where their back is against the wall, and if they don't agree, they could go out of business. And so then they fight, but then they have to do it. And there's still rationale there. And
I've had both of those. I think the toughest part and I can't remember if we talked about this, but I do the cases at GroupSense. Those are brought to us by cyber insurance companies and law firms. I do a bunch of pro bono work also. So I see all ends of the spectrum. And on the small business side, I think that where that gets flipped, where somebody's like, "No way, I'm not paying terrorists, I'm not doing this," and they eventually come to the conclusion that they're harming 30 other people's livelihoods for not doing it.
Yeah.
I've also had somebody who was going down the path, and this is actually fairly recent, was going down the path of not paying out of principle, and they were able to actually recover from the backups.
Really?
They ended up paying just to have the data removed from the shame site on behalf of their clients.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of social pressure, I think, and this was a healthcare organization, so there's some pretty nasty data that was up on the
the HHS wall of shame is not something you want to wind up on.
No.
So
Kurtis, thinking about that, we all IT guys, IT professionals, I will call it nerds that we are kind of prepared. We know what, look for, be ready for. But I will not say the problem. I will say the high issue here is with people that are not technical at all.
Right.
They are actually the ones that they target, mostly with, phishing emails, mostly. You were talking to a non-technical audience. What is the one everyday habit that you will beg them to change to improve their digital safety?
It's the same thing. It's stop reusing passwords, basically.
Oh my God.
Is the number one
It's
thing.
unbelievable that's so basic. And yet, like you go down, and I've been in cybersecurity for a while now, and it still gets down to the things that they said before I was in it. And it's still shocking to me to hear.
I know we've been saying the same things for 10 years, but so one of the things I talk about in my talks is I talk about, I'll often refer to the cyber poverty line, and it's kind of what you're saying, Dr. Sanchez, that there's a certain line. Technology is absolutely fundamental to everything we do. Mm-hmm. Like you can't survive in business or life without embracing it at some level. I think it is unreasonable to expect the average human being to understand and mitigate the risk associated with that adoption. That's not fair. Like I'm a really technical guy. I don't know how this works. This is my iPhone, right? I don't know how that works. So I don't think I should have to know how that works. But I do think that, as we evolve as humans, there are some things that we're going to have to learn. And one of the quips I use often is like, people will ask me, well, do we all have to become cybersecurity experts? And my answer is no, just like you don't have to become a doctor to know how not to die, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a small list of things that I think you can learn, and there are tools that you can use too, like password managers that solve some of these things for you. And then one of my other soapboxes that's sort of attached to that is I believe that it's a civic duty to adopt these things.
I agree completely.
We're all
I think
connected.
it's a matter of national security, and it is your civic duty.
I do this one talk called the digital butterfly effect, which is, the butterfly effect from chaos theory, where butterfly flaps its wings in one part of the world, cycling. And the subtitle to that is From the Dry Cleaners to the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base. And I show how what seems to be a benign cyber attack, a phishing attack on a dry cleaner, ends up being a national security concern. And the point of that whole thing is like we're all connected,
right.
and we all have a responsibility. And if as a group collectively we all do a little bit more, it'll improve everybody's lives. And that's one of my soapboxes.
Kurtis, let me tell you, that was one of the main things that I used to work for the Vatican, for the priest. And when I went to tell them, well, please don't use your AOL account anymore. Please use now the official one that is given to everybody. And they says, I don't care about my password. I don't care about the emails. I don't. Yeah, but did you ever saw the movie 6 Degrees of Separation with Kevin Bacon?
Yeah, right.
Where basically the basis of the movie is that everybody's connected to everybody. And it's just 6 people in between.
Right.
So I used to tell them, look, you know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows the Pope. So if I hack your account, I will be using you like a bridge to get to the Pope. And I can destroy the Catholic Church in minutes. And then, oh my God, yes, you're right. Let me go and change my password right away. And they used to choose this, Bible verse in Latin with numbers and letters. Like, woof.
That's great. But if it works for them, that's phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty unique password manager.
Yeah, that's great. It's got all the biblical phrases. That's awesome. Well,
that's a cool story.
I mean, you one of my last questions for you was, in your book, and I will cite it correctly, it was on page 57, you say, if you do only one thing after reading this book, you should look at your personal digital risk. And that's basically what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and I think in the book, I also talk a little bit about your personal attack surface too. So it's like, just like a business, assume that it could still happen. It might still happen. Reduce how effective that is for the bad guys. So don't keep all of the emails you've ever been written for 30 years in an inbox. You don't need all of that.
Exactly.
So I think there's some just basic things that everybody could be doing, and we'd all be better off.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap up, because I want to be respectful of your time, talk to us about what you're seeing and the future of cybercrime, AI's role, how they're leveraging it through generative AI, agentic AI to some degrees. Like where are we heading right now, Kurtis?
Well, I do think I mentioned I think the main reason they're not using AI for custom polymorphic malware is because they don't have to, because we keep reusing passwords. But as we as we start to improve, they will.
That's so sad.
I know.
Yeah, we got AI. We could really crush you with it. We don't have to because you leave the doors open. Like that's basically the statement.
Right. Yeah. Why spend the effort? Right. I do think that these things are hard to predict because of AI. It's like if you talk to an AI a venture capitalist right now, their biggest challenge right now is deciding where the technology of any particular company will go in the next 3 years because of AI. I think that's true for cybercrime and cybersecurity, where it's that tool is only getting better on both sides. Like we're using it in defense, they're using it in offense, and it's escalating and escalating. It's an arms race. It's really hard to say. I do know that the most effective, approaches, and this goes back to your episode with John DiMaggio, is almost traditional criminal investigation type work. I mean, it's getting down to finding an asset and flipping the asset, and then they give you access to, it's that stuff. And so as our federal law enforcement gets smarter about cyber investigations and things like that, I think we will make a difference. And then the rest of it's going to be diplomacy. And I don't know how that's going to go,
Well, that's always interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just a hot mess.
It is.
That's phenomenal. Any position or thoughts on synthetic IDs, AI deepfakes? I always ask because I'm fascinated by them. I deepfake myself all the time. Like,
oh, nice.
I talk to my kids. They're like, "Dad, why were you doing that?" I'm like, "I'm standing right here. That's not me." They're like, "How are you doing that?" I'm like, "It's like a parlor game." Like, it's just
actually, that's a great idea. You in the beginning, you were saying about like what I tell my wife when she's upset with me. You'll send your avatar to talk to her.
That way it fields it all, right? I better make sure she doesn't watch this.
Yeah, I was thinking about the same with mine.
I'll edit that out. I'm going to edit this out. But honestly, tell me what your thoughts are. I mean, I know it's kind of like popular to talk about and a lot of people are addressing it. Maybe it's just another element of social engineering, really.
It is, but it is like another thing I've been doing recently is doing seminars and workshops for people who are recently retired or about to retire.
Oh yeah.
On scams and how they get scammed and what to do if they get scammed and how to identify the scams. So I've been doing these, and usually it's like sponsored by a wealth management firm or something like that. Right. And one of the things I'll do in those workshops is I will deepfake. So whoever introduces me, the MC, I will record that and on my iPhone, and then I will, in front of the audience, duplicate that voice over the microphone to show them. And so I walk them through how that's being used in these different like grandparent scams and things like that. So I do think
pig butchering and
my gosh,
all that, the romance.
Have you had Aaron West on yet?
I've not. We need to.
You should. If you want me to connect you, I can.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So she helps me with a lot of these projects.
Too, when you're doing.
I will. I'll send him. I'm sending him the screenshot of your bookshelf.
That's great. That's excellent. So you will do that live for them and replicate their voice so that you can get it to because it used to require hours and hours of sample in order to
takes like
match
10 seconds, 15 seconds now, and it's super
so
accurate.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I think the point of doing that wasn't just to do like a parlor trick, like you said. Right. It is to say when the person who calls you, who says they're the Las Vegas Police Department, and they've got your grandkid, in custody, and you hear your grandkid in the background going, "Grandma, get me out of here." All they need is 10 seconds of your grandkid's voice. Where can they get that? Yeah. TikTok, Instagram. Like
a voicemail. I saw somebody
voicemail. Yeah.
Get it from a voicemail when you leave when you set up your own box, your own inbox for your own voicemail. They say not to even use your voice now. Yep. Because somebody could just call it, grab that, and use that sample to replicate your voice somewhere.
100%. Yeah. So the point is to show how easy it is to do this, and as an older person, I don't think you fully grasp that this is real unless you see it.
Right.
And I do it in front of them.
That's phenomenal.
So, yeah.
That's great. Kurtis, thank you so much for your time, sir. We really genuinely appreciate it. Thanks for all you do. Great story. Excellent book. We will have links in the show notes to Group Sense, your socials, as well as a link to grab a copy of the book. I strongly recommend it. It's phenomenal. What's on the horizon for you? What are you doing next? Public speaking? You've got things going. I know you were out at Black Hat or DEF CON.
Yeah, we sold out of books at Black Hat. It was great.
That's great.
I'm doing some taking a little bit of time off, but I'm a big motorcycle guy, so I'm riding across the country on my motorcycle right now.
Very cool.
And doing book signings along the way. I'm going to be doing the CXO Forum next month in Atlantic City and doing a talk there and some book signings. So just trying to enjoy what's left of the summer.
That's great. So there's not enough risk in your life. You're gonna get on a motorcycle and drive across.
You sound like my dad.
Hey, that's why I don't ride them. Plus, my wife won't let me because I would die if I did them. Right. So you're more skilled. So hey, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Sanchez.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Bye.